So how long does a foreclosure process take in the state of Massachusetts? In this video, you are going to find out everything you need to know. Okay, whether you're getting foreclosed on, you're doing the foreclosure, there's all sorts of ways. And if you are getting foreclosed on, don't worry. Okay, we're going to show you some ways to make this an advantage to you, if you will. And stick around to the very end. I've got some really cool stuff for you. We can have some fun with that. Let's get right into this. There's so many fun things with this. First of all, let's talk about foreclosure as a whole. And I've said this in other videos before. If you are the one getting foreclosed on, okay, do not put your head in the sand, okay? The banks don't want to foreclose. I don't want to foreclose. Nobody wants to do that. You have to contact the lender as soon as possible. Let me give you my scenario. If I was lending money on a particular piece of property and they called me right away and said, hey, this just happened, it's going to be really difficult for us to make the mortgage payments, I would immediately find out what the deal is, what kind of time do they need, and start working some things out. Because really, going through a foreclosure is a pain in the rear. And it's always funny to me. People always say, oh, they're just trying to get your property. That's not what we want. Okay, that is not what I want. I sold the property, I put a loan on the property, I carried a note on the property because there's revenue coming from that. If 5 years later from now, I go into foreclosing that property, the property is going to be worth more than I got on originally. So, I mean, I'm okay with that, but that's not what I want. Neither do the banks, believe it or not. What happens with the banks is the banks, they are regulated. Okay, so when the feds come in and they see X percentage of loans are in default, in other words, 30 days or more late, it puts them at risk and they start watching things real closely. You can go online and find out how many loans is Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Citicorp, whoever, Pennywise, how many loans are 30, 60, and 90 days late, because that is what they call a leading indicator. Here's the deal. Once a property owner becomes delinquent on their mortgage payments and they bail themselves out and get back on the straight and narrow, the likelihood of that happening again, unfortunately, it's just the way it is, it goes up pretty dramatically. Again, there's that leading indicator thing that we've got going on. So they want to look at that and be very cautious of it. But here's the deal. In Massachusetts, if a property goes delinquent, they don't really do anything for a minimum 30 days, 90 days, somewhere in that area. At that point, they've got to file what's called an NOD, a notice of default. In that notice of default, it says, okay, you haven't made payments on it. We got to start the process. That doesn't mean it's being foreclosed on. That actually kicks in another process, which means, sometimes they call it mediation. Sometimes they'll just call it no negotiation, whatever it is. That usually kicks in another 90 days on when the homeowner can come into the lender and say, hey, this is what's going on. Can we do a loan modification? Can we do whatever, which will in turn stop the foreclosure? Now, understand at this point, anywhere between 3 to 6 months has gone by. 3 months would be super fast. Typically 4 to 6 months has already gone by when no payments are being made. So the bank is going to want some kind of a rectification. At that point, they're going to say, okay, we're going into foreclosure. Now we're going to go to the county, start the process, and bring it up for a sale. And this property is going to be sold. The eviction process in Massachusetts actually is pretty simple. If a property's been judicially foreclosed on, say that 10 times, the process is not very long at all. Now, let's switch gears on when I say not very long at all. To evict somebody out of a property could take as little as, after a foreclosure, this is important to understand, 2 to 4 weeks at the max. Now, again, the misnomer out there is, oh, it's really hard to get somebody out of a property. But understand, that eviction is the end of a 6 or 9 month process. That's what they're talking about, not the eviction itself. This goes back to who is in the property. And this goes just as much for a renter as it does to somebody that you may be carrying a note for. who they are is a very good indication of who they're gonna be. Tigers don't usually change their stripes. So if you find you've got a renter and they've got a story of why they were late or that, it's gonna happen again. On-time renters are on-time renters and not on-time renters are not on-time renters. I know that sounds so simplistic, but it just is what it is. I've been really lucky with my tenants because I've had really good renters. Okay, because I'm very particular about that. I'd rather spend a couple months longer keeping the property vacant and getting the right property renter in there than getting the wrong one in there. So just keep that in mind. I'm not going to get into that in this video, but that's where you're at with it. If I buy a property at a deed sale in Massachusetts, so look, Massachusetts is what we call a dual state. It has liens and deeds. They can sell in bulk. It goes usually by different townships and what have you, not so much by the county. Most of them are selling the deed to the property. I'm not a big fan of Massachusetts only because they make it more difficult, but that is also contrary to what you will find in some of my conferences when I say, when a county makes it difficult to buy tax liens or deeds, rub your hands together and get excited because they're not picking on you, they're making it difficult for everybody. It's nothing personal. So why haven't you dug into Massachusetts some? Because it's just too far away from me and I've got other places I can go and do really well at. So if you happen to be in that area, spend a little time. Here's a perfect example of that. Louisiana, haven't done a whole lot there. They have parishes instead of counties, French law, a lot of different things happening there, but it doesn't mean it's not a good area. I've literally done one conference in 30 years in Massachusetts. We had a very small group of about 50 people there, and one of my students in that class blew it up. In other words, they just freaking killed it in Louisiana because they were willing to spend the extra time to make that happen. So that's really what you've got to look at in there. So let's go back to the foreclosures in Massachusetts. In a tax deed foreclosure, it's already been done. So now is all you're doing is evicting person on the property, getting full possession, and cleaning up the title, which means any excess liens or encumbrances that are still on there, which they will show on there, no longer have any validity on the property. You just got to clean it off. I love to say that. You're cleaning the title. So it's like a whiteboard. You clean all that stuff off and you should be good to go with that. And again, that process will probably take about 60 to 90 days to get a negotiable title or a sellable title where you can get clear title insurance on. And so that's what you're really looking at. Now remember, if you are doing a regular foreclosure, you should be looking at anywhere from about, I would say, a minimum of 6 months, really realistically 9 months, to go from the very beginning of foreclosure all the way to the end. Now listen, it really depends on you. If you're foreclosing on the property, you got to hit those timelines right on place. I'm okay with working with a property, a borrower that is delinquent on that, but you have to keep moving the ball forward. As soon as you deviate off that, it just adds more time to it, and you can extend that. So when you hear these war stories of, oh my God, the foreclosure took forever, it was probably the lender that made it last so long rather than some kind of judicial thing. The other thing that can make it go longer is the courts. It depends on how backed up they are. And really all I'm trying to talk about is conceptually here. I'm not trying to give you a law degree in foreclosure in Massachusetts. You really should be hiring somebody that has an expertise in this, and that's what their job is to hit those deadlines, hit those times so that you're doing this thing properly, and you're giving everybody the chance that they deserve on that situation. Now listen, I've got so much information on this that can show you how to make money in these situations, both ends of this. It doesn't matter what it is. I've got a brand new course on this. All you have to do is go down to the description down below, go to Higgins Method, just click on that link. It'll drop you into my website, which will show you exactly how I will give you for free a brand new course on that. So good luck, God bless, and we'll see you out there.